Welcome to the Real Talk. My name is Dorcas Magoba, and we are so happy to have you. Cut.
You don't have to cut.
Why are you guys laughing?
Yes.
Why are you guys laughing?
It's a broadcast.
I was laughing at Elvis. That is how to
I was waiting for both.
3, 2, 1, action.
And don't, when you're editing,
Okay,
don't
welcome.
cut this out.
Yeah, ignore
Except
these
this very
people.
statement of don't cut this out.
Ignore
You
these
just came
people.
out like that.
So yeah, welcome to the Real Talk. My name is Dorcas Magoba, and we are so glad to have you today. Are you watching this after 5 weeks, 1 week, 1 year, 5 years? Man, this is the space to be, and woman, by the way. Yeah, so today we are doing the Real Talk differently, and that's why you can see different people around us. Yay! So I will give an opportunity to everyone to introduce themselves so that we can start the conversation. Thank you so much. We will start with this beautiful, awesome lady.
Hello everyone, I'm Pony Cynthia.
Pony?
Yes.
Is it because you have a ponytail? Is it called a
No,
ponytail?
it's actually the name. It's actually the local name, depending on how you pronounce it. Second daughter.
Okay. So I already have a daughter, second born, so it's too late to name Pony. Yeah. Okay.
The vice president.
Yes.
Yes, Emmanuel Lama, as usual, me and her, one.
Yes. We are married.
Yes.
Let him not confuse you. Yes, we are married. Yes.
Yes, I'm Tarema Kosi Constantine, and I'm also married. And I'm happy to be here with you guys.
To Musime, I'm not married. I'm still working on it, man.
So thank you so much for joining us. Today we have a conversation in a different way, and Conan Tomosime will take us through this conversation because we want the hard questions, the hard things to be asked. We don't want to corrupt anyone. So just so you know, this is not a scripted scene. So it's coming to you, just unedited, unscripted. Over to you, Conan.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if it looks like when she says over to you, it looks like oh, it's too official. But yeah, but honestly, what informed this whole session is actually from feedback of the people that watch, right? Whereby some people they're watching the story of Lama and Dorcas and how they have been talking about this whole thing of relationships. And people came and were like, yo man, I admire what they have to say, but for them it looks like man, some of us our things even before we got to get this advice, a lot of things are just gone dark, right? Because sometimes somebody starts watching a advice about a relationship. It happens when they already have 3 children from 3 different people, right? Or it happens at a time whereby maybe
One relationship has already failed.
Or 10.
Yeah. So it tends to sound like, let's say, let's say someone is educated by their father, and then their father takes them through campus, and then they finish, and then by 23, they're out there in the world with a degree. And then somebody else is 35 and they stopped in senior 4, and then they have a job that needs also a degree, and then they are trying to catch up, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that maybe if we have this interactive thing, we can try to see how we can also have a message that maybe somebody else who might be feeling like, do I also still have a chance, can ask, right? So one of the most common things that people go through right now is the addiction to, when they're reading these toxic things that we see on memes, right? WhatsApp, Twitter, they tend to get all these negative messages that find it easy to enter their hearts because maybe of some mistakes that they make. Yeah. Some people, and Lama maybe will just talk about this. Some people, you find that you were lucky to have a figure that guided you. Maybe your mother, maybe your father, maybe a church. Yeah. There are some other people, they are not that lucky. And you find that by the time they come to get their life together, life had happened to them. They have they have been broken. Maybe they have a child out of wedlock, and maybe it's not even only that. It's too bad they don't have a job, right? So a person like that reaches a time and have been so disappointed. So Lama, what advice would you give to someone who has, let's say a girl, she has been dumped enough times, she has been broken so many times, and maybe she's now stuck with, she has like 2 children from 2 different men, and she also maybe has lost hope. Like every time you tell her that relationships work, in her mind she's like, what are you talking about? A person like that, where do they even start from?
Well, first of all, they say there's that phrase. An opinion is like a nose. Everyone has one, but you can always poke 2 holes in them.
Okay.
Okay.
Relationships are one of those things that
everyone has an opinion, and they have a great sense of this whole idea that it's the right one.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even in what would seemingly be someone who was lucky, there's some degree of brokenness. Okay? It's you will never find a human being who is not broken in some sense.
Yeah.
Even on the surface, like the example you brought in where you have a father figure and all these things, it seems to be they'll have sort of like a good way, if we're talking in the context of marriage, for example.
Yeah.
On the surface, it looks like they'll have a bit of a less struggle-filled marriage.
Yeah.
But it's really not the case. Why? Because let's take an example of someone who has had generally a good life, where you grew up in a safe environment, and you had a father figure, present father. There are some advantages, but they can only take you far. It's like someone who is talented, okay, but you don't work on your talent, on your gifting. It's basically the same thing. So if someone is in a situation where they have had so many hard knocks in life, and you came into me and all these things, and you feel unfixable, 2 things would come to mind. Number one, there is always a beginning point.
Yes.
When you say beginning point, like where you are at the moment?
Where you are at the moment
It's your beginning
is
point.
your beginning point. Okay? Your process might take you longer, but the only advantage you have to have on the change is that realization that, you know what, man, what if there's another life? What if I can be fixed? Okay? Bringing the person to that realization of, okay, what if I also qualify to walk in this channel of having a good marriage, a good, and this is what you find, man. When you meet, it's like meeting what do they call them? I don't want to use the word ugly. when you meet,
Yeah, you know,
Okay,
whatever
maybe
you say
let's
next.
use maybe someone who is not the beauty standard.
yeah, when you
What
meet
is the beauty
someone who doesn't, when you meet someone who doesn't cut it in the measure of the physical beauty, and they've been married by a relatively handsome guy. There's some good measure of valuing that. Okay, so even when you beat the odds, for this person who is broken, man, there's a beautiful story out of the way that is more beautiful than the person who even wasn't broken in the first place to begin with. So the most important thing is the beginning point. For me, that would be, if someone really came out for that advice, I would realize that as, okay, that's also a signal that they believe, maybe what if there is hope for me? Okay? So I would emphasize that by the fact that you're thinking there's a small possibility that I can also have a family, I can also have a husband, I can also have children. That's something that inherent within you. Every human being, there's no human being who doesn't have greatness in them.
Okay, now Cynthia, you, me and you, I think we are the 2 people that are struggling on this session. So we are okay. We're not
We
married.
represent a generation that is struggling to get there.
So now there tends to be this whole new school of thought where people always weigh the options.
Yes.
Right. I think also you will have some friends who will tell you that. Right. Somebody keeps on trying and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then tries again and it doesn't work. And then they find themselves sinking into this whole, so should I say, setting, whereby they always feel that being alone is better than trying. Like it comes to a time whereby in their mind, it is the balance has shifted. Because somebody gives someone a chance and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Give somebody else a chance, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So they reach a time and they start thinking that, wait, I am happier when I'm alone. And the moment I start getting somebody and I put myself out there, because every time you're starting to date, there is sacrifice involved.
Yes.
You ever experienced that? Like for you, what do you think about that?
I feel like that is a very valid point.
Yeah.
Because most cases, the way we are now,
Yeah.
we have sort of set up ourselves for failure before it even happened.
When
So
you- yeah.
before you get into a relationship, you already have all the negatives that could happen.
Yeah.
So you go up already with your guard up because it's practical. It's what's happening. You see it around. Even the people who are supposed to set examples. We were putting so much emphasis on the idea of someone to guide you through it,
Yeah.
ignoring the fact that examples may be much more important than what someone may say.
Yeah.
So now when we look at the examples that some of the married people are actually setting,
Yeah.
because you find a married man and he's outside,
He's in your DM.
he's young girls, he's in your DMs, he's doing all these things. And then you also have examples maybe in your households of failed marriages,
Yeah.
or failed relationships.
Yeah.
So when you look at it usually now from a perspective like when you see people happily married and they're telling you you have to overcome this, you feel like it's something that has been rehearsed. How do we get past the lack of enough examples
Yeah. Dorcas,
or the wrong examples?
yeah, before Dorcas jumps in, and I think I'll just supplement what she's saying. There's a whole lot of toxicity does not only come from single people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it also comes from some married people, whereby they make it look like for you to have a good marriage, it's being dead to self. You get that?
Yeah.
And these people, like men, they hang out with men in bars, and then they see these ladies who tell you, "Hey, man, if you want a marriage to work, well, you have to be okay with this and
Yes,
this and this and this,
exactly.
right?" Now, young people are not like the older generations, where people would just be quiet, right? So it tends to look like the people who are married and have it together, there are so much of exceptions, and the bulk of it tends to be just people who are putting up.
People who are pushing their way.
Yeah, I wanted you to expound on that, Dorcas.
I want to start from a place of telling people we didn't have a good marriage. No, we didn't.
Neither do we have a perfect one.
And we don't have a perfect marriage even today. Because we will fight, we will disagree, we will do things that, we disagree all the time. But I think we've enjoyed our marriage the most the last 2 years. And I think I've always said that. Now, ask me about our first 3 years in marriage. Like I've already said, I almost asked for a divorce or a separation. He says he never used to think about it, but I almost asked for it. But where did that turning point come from? It came from a place of knowing that, you know what, I am here to stay. I either fix it to be happy or I leave it. So when you're going into this relationship thing, it's very important for you to focus on you. Because for us, I think that is what we did. Where I say, okay, I want to be a Proverbs 31 woman. What does it mean? A Proverbs 31 woman will take care of her family, will do this and this, will do these things. We respect the husband regardless, because one of the things that was really killing our marriage was because I was making more money than my husband. So you think you have it all, you have the money, you can afford to say, I'm going to Mbara today, after all, I have my money. And that was killing our marriage. But when you get to understand that happiness doesn't come from money, you make a decision and you say, I will respect my husband regardless of how much he brings on the table. Before, I want to emphasize this. When we go to church, whether you're a Muslim and you go to the mosque, but I'll speak for the church because I went to Christ the King. When I went to church, I said, I do for better, for worse. But most people want to focus on the for better. But for worse is different. For worse for us was the fact that, man, our finances, we were struggling. I got into so much debt, and as a result, the family also suffered. But also it's because we did not have an income coming in from both ends. So that made our family really go to the worst.
Okay.
And that was our worst. So for
Okay.
me, it's that thing of remembering that this relationship, just like when you're friends, really, when we are friends, we don't only become friends when it's convenient. No, we are friends because we are for better, for worse.
Yeah.
We are here to stay.
Constantine, how realistic is that? Like, you're a person.
He's married.
Yeah, he's married. You're a person who follows trends, right?
The way he's
Yeah. He introduced. He has a civil wedding, right? So, I feel that in this era, right, we might end up. I don't know if I use the word pretentious, if I'm overstating it, but dynamics have changed a lot, because it is like I feel like when you say that the two things that we have always tried to explain marriage on and as a stable relationship has been culture and has been faith. Let's say you're a Muslim or you're a Christian, you tend to have marriage based on those rules.
Yes.
And also maybe people are not like that culture, whereby there were set rules from our Sega, right? But now we live in a time whereby, especially like these kids that are born, should I say Gen X or what? These people are rebellious in most of those two things. So now I always battle with this thing. If someone is not that religious and someone is not that traditional, these people are there, right? They have been raised in families where things are also a little bit different, right? What exactly do you use as a benchmark? For you to have a successful marriage, is it a must that you have to comply to the religious aspect of rules or the traditional aspect of rules? What if you don't fit in both of those? Or for you have to just be alone?
Now, actually, I think, there's this guy, this saying when in French Revolution, when there was a scarcity of cake.
Yeah.
So they used to have this saying where they would say, you can't have your cake
Yeah.
and eat it at the same time. So like to fit in marriage, like I've been in marriage for the last actually now 10 years because yeah, she moved in 2010
Okay.
at the end of 2010. So if you don't have a faith and you don't have a culture,
Yeah.
the marriage is meant to have many problems which are actually unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because when you see the modern trend, who is the enemy of relationships? The first enemy of relationships is the disintegration of culture. And it passes through systems where you find that there are people who intentionally, you see me, I'm a conspiracy theorist. So there are people who intentionally try to hit family. Because when you remove family,
You disorganize a population.
yes, any population where you separate family. Actually, I always tell my friends that if slave trade did not take all those men and those strong women, they would not have colonized us. But when they took kids from their parents from their kids,
People are not collaborating.
they were not united. And now the problem is that our culture, which is necessary and unnecessary, because we have necessary shift of culture. For example, there's materialism. Building now, like this studio, if you're building this studio, it will cost you 80 man. So that means if I marry someone and we want to build a home, she needs to work and I need to work.
Yeah.
But now the culture of today, you might not get to work in the same place.
Yeah.
So you find that the culture itself necessitates someone to work somewhere very far, and you work somewhere very far.
Yeah.
The marriage is struggling at that.
Yeah.
Either someone has to compromise and go the other side, or someone compromises and come this side. Then if there's also this cultural norms where they say marriage is no longer defined as a woman and male who are together for a spiritual cause of bringing up kids. So now we are no longer as responsible and tied to the cultural norm in our head that I have to have a woman, we produce kids, we make sure they grow up with a father and mother because of these reasons. So we end up having Gen Z guys who think, I don't need a paps, I don't need a mom. And when they marry, they'll produce, and they won't even care having a family.
So yeah, for you, so you're one of those people that is pro-traditional and religion. Just have it as institution, have those as institutions of correcting and maybe binding marriage.
I think they are necessary, and I've seen marriages. A marriage which is not, it has no component of faith and culture can't work.
I would actually want to say that that is authority. Anyone who is not going to have authority over them, it's really hard to deal with them. So if I have no one that I'm accountable to, because if I come from a church, I'm accountable to my church leaders. If I have a family, my father, my mother, my brothers should ask me, why am I doing things the way I'm doing? That's why elders call for meetings.
I'll come to Dorcas. I wanted Lamar to speak into something, right? So someone will ask you, like I try in my mind, even when we are speaking, when we're not on camera, I always try to tell you that one of the things that I fear the most is living in an echo chamber. I fear that so much.
To explain that to the viewers.
An echo chamber is where you find that you have a particular system of belief, right? And every person that you interact with or every person you agree with must conform to that. So in other words, you keep on whatever comes back to you bounces off similar sentiments and similar beliefs, right? So now, like sometimes I just hear people who have different opinions, right? So it's like this. Constantine is talking about that whole thing of faith and tradition and tradition, right? Yeah, I hear you. But a lot of people make this case. The new generation will question everything.
Yes.
So they will say like, the way we used to change to select leaders changed. Way back, to be a leader, you had to have royal blood in the days of the kingships. And then after that, I don't know if it was in Rome what democracy was passed. And now the person who is competent, or at least is corrupt enough to look competent, takes over. The way we are exchanging in commerce and trade, things like that changed. So people feel that how can everything change? And for some reason, marriage is the one thing which we approach that. And that is why you see a lot of young people some people call it rebellion, some other people call it being liberal and modest. When they hear an idea coming in, like from there's a popular presenter here in Uganda who said that for him he believes that instead of husband and wife going to church, we have an agreement, whereby if I'm Tomazime and I see Cynthia and I'm like, you know what, instead of raising our expectations, I am the guy, you're the lady. We're going to have a child, but let's not marry. Let's not raise our expectations. Let's not do this. So these whole other divergent views of what a marriage can be are starting to be entertained by the younger generation. How would you see that?
First of all, normally when people talk about faith, they get this whole idea where they're given a whole set of like rules to follow. People view this whole set of rules that somehow God came up with to keep human beings in check. Okay? But I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
Everything that God designed for a human being don't benefit God. Okay?
We are naive of the benefits God created for us.
It's for our own benefit. God can wipe the world and get a new set of people. It's not like when he will miss our worship, our glory, our what. No, it's these are principles like gravity. Okay? If I don't care how much debate you have, okay, you can come up with your research and your arguments. If you jump into an aeroplane and come down to oppose gravity, we will pick up meat. It's just that simple. So I don't care about your debates and your arguments. There are principles that are designed by God to our own benefit. So whether you view at it as if they are controlling, stay with your debate, but we'll see how that comes up. Because for us, we are like, okay,
the result.
What are the principles that God has ingrained in His Word for us? Things like honor, things like submission, things like me, a man. You mentioned something about where it's portrayed as if we have to die to self. Actually, it's we have to die to self, but with the enablement of God. Sort of like God convinces you to live a life that is about the other person.
Selfless.
Okay, it's not even within your means to do that. Okay, but with the recognition that this is a principle that was put in God's word to my benefit, spurred me to begin engaging God. He convinced me that, Chief, it's I don't lose anything. Okay? But here are principles that can help you live a happy marriage. Here are principles. So one of the things was, where in the way it says, you love your wife as Christ loved the church. Christ gave his life away for the church. Leadership in the Bible, because a man in any home is a leader, but it's servant leadership. The Bible says for you to be the best among them all, you have to serve them all. You have to be a servant. So I am the leader in my home, but the mindset
You're
is
the
I
biggest
serve the most. Okay? Then on her end, it seems to be as a requirement to submit. And this is a whole misunderstood concept of submission. Submission is in that acknowledgement of my leadership on the family, which gives her a covering. What she mentioned about authority. Meet a woman who doesn't have authority on the husband, and you're the boss, you'll have a rough time. Okay? So the idea of submission is the recognition that there has to be orderliness in the home, so the man takes the leadership in decision making, in steering the family towards God. It's not even my joy. I aspire to make her happy and all these things. But that's not my core calling in the home. My core calling in the home is to lead her towards God. Okay? Hers is to submit to that leadership. So actually it ends up becoming her weapon. When you have someone you're leading and they are following, you don't have to drag them. They follow along. So it's a win-win from both ends.
If as you're still explaining that, how then do you explain also like the changes in marriage that we see even in the Bible itself? I think when you really look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, still it's like, because I mean some of these kings had a lot of concubines and stuff like that. So it also looks like the Institute of Marriage also underwent sort of reformation. I don't know if I'm accurate to say that.
So there's this story in the Bible, begins from I think Matthew 5 and then goes up all the way. So Christ is taking like the Old Testament and how these guys had interpreted it and was rectifying some things. When it came to marriage, he said, okay, he uses this phrase, you've had it said. Okay? So he had a Jewish audience. These are people who had the laws and all these things. So you've had it said that when you marry someone and there are misunderstandings, you can give them a divorce letter and that's it. And then it's like, but that wasn't God's original plan. He was sort of like that whole God's compassion. Then he explained of this is what God's original intention was. He said, if you a husband and a wife, this is meant to last a lifetime. Then nateka woka condition ka maybe if there is an idea of adultery, because sex is more than a physical thing. You're bonding yourself even spiritually to another person. So in an event now with a husband and wife, there are many dynamics that are more than physical. Okay, so it's not like a lot more change. Yes, polygamy is way prevalent in the Old Testament, but that wasn't God's original plan. In Genesis, God made a man and a woman. He says, so a man shall leave his home and go and be yoked to his wife. That has always been God's original plan. So the change, by the way, guys, there is nothing new on earth.
These things have happened.
It's just a repetition. How many generations in the past do you know? Like how many years? It's just Ecclesiastes.
Grandfathers, you know.
The wisest man apart from Jesus, Solomon, he had thousands of women. The guy lived in a generation where he turned his country, gold and silver were common as stones. His country was that prosperous. He was that wise. But look at what he said. He said, man, guys, there is nothing new on earth. He's the same guy who wrote the most love letter, Song of Songs, and he talks about one wife, one husband. He's tested it all.
So let's
Yes, he's lived it all.
To balance it, right? Do you believe, Cynthia, do you believe that marriage can only be explained in the context of faith? A lot of people, maybe to add on what Lama has said, there are also people who you find they don't look at marriage as only being in the context of the Bible or the Quran, right? Maybe they also have things. I don't think there's anybody who can exist that they don't have something they believe in.
Yes.
But there are people who do not look at the Bible as maybe they pick a few things from there, then they also look at the Quran. You know these people. I know that our age, you're in the right age bracket.
Yes.
Like, first expound on that, and how do you think a person like that might have a challenge? Or do you think a person like that should also find a way of aligning themselves to the biblical interpretation of marriage or the Quran?
Yes, I feel like you cannot really base so much. You cannot base marriage only on the biblical understanding of marriage.
Okay.
Because I personally think, especially coming from the times we're in, very many people have tried to base it on that and it has not necessarily worked out. I feel like there's so many other things you can base it on. You can base it on culture, like he said, and then there are other things like choices.
Okay.
I feel like everything we're talking about here right now is an eventuality. But nobody's really teaching our generation how to make the right choice of a person to go through these eventualities with. Because there is such a thing as marrying a wrong person.
Okay.
The person who is not for you.
Okay.
And then you expect that when you marry this person, you're going to sort out all your issues with this person. But in the first place, you weren't supposed to be together. So I feel like the thing our generation is most lacking is not the tools to survive in marriage. No, because those have been taught, passed down generation after generation. The issue is how to make the right choice of the person.
As you continue, let me try to just say something as you conclude and we go to Dorcas. Do you feel that all the tools that are being passed down from the older generation, do you think they need to be twitched a bit to suit the current generation, or do you feel these are rules in stone and they need to be passed down the generations and they're the same ideals for different times?
I feel like, genuinely speaking, certain rules are universal. They can't change.
They can't change in marriage.
They can't change in marriage. You have to
do that.
Get used to them and move with that.
Okay.
But those rules can change, cannot necessarily change how they are written, but they can try to mold themselves with the current society and the surroundings.
Dorcas, I want to come to you. And when first wait. Now I want to pass your addition to her. I'm going to pass it through a question, and you help us break from the question that you go to you. So there's a friend of mine. She was here in Uganda, and now she went back to UK, right? She's in UK. She's a Mzungu, right? She stays in UK and sometimes in Canada. And she told me that in Canada the financial statuses have changed so much that in most cases you find that two parents hiring a nanny is one of the most expensive things. So let's say a man is earning, I'm going to use Uganda shillings just as provision of currency, but of course in the UK, right? So if a man is having a job and is earning 200,000 a month, and the woman is earning 1.5, if they hire a nanny and the nanny needs 800, so the guy brings 200, the woman brings 1.5, that's 1.7. They remove 800, they are left with 1.4, the woman brings 1.5. They are left with 900, right? But then if the man was to leave the job of 200 and comes back home and takes care of the children and be a house husband, and the woman keeps on bringing 1.5, now they don't bring the nanny who's taking 800, and now they have 1.5 instead of getting the 900 or below. So she told me that for them, when they sit down on the pool, it makes sense to have a house husband. Now bring that as to Africans. It is going to be so hard to convince to Musime, even if you're earning 5 million and I'm earning 200K, to come and be a house husband. So now, when she told me that, it sort of challenged me. Because I'm this person who believes in some of the things that we have as a culture, as a tradition, as a man is a provider. But then when you're a man who has also read, it's like, are you really going to, if you're in that setting, are you going to be like, no, a man is a provider and refuse to be home as a house help? And because for them, that side it's harsh. Winter comes and doesn't find you have AC, you freeze to death.
Yes.
So I wanted, because you said something in the previous, when you were speaking, you talked about the whole thing of authority.
Yeah.
So I wanted, as you're adding on to it, to consider something like that
Yeah.
and see how you can clear it up so that it can suit the whole conversation we're having.
That is so easy because we've done that, for example.
Okay.
I'm sure he would be in a better place to talk about it. Because there is a time we really didn't have money, and we said, you know what, instead of having a house help, we can always switch roles.
Okay.
You stay home, I go and fend for the family. I stay home, you go, and we've used that like several times.
Doesn't that alter our whole understanding of man, woman, the power, I don't even not use the word power, that's a very funny word. The authority, and then also
The idea of
culture.
submission.
The whole idea of how we perceive marriage of a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Doesn't it alter it?
I think for me, and I think I want to link this to her submission.
Yeah.
The thing about the Bible and being attached to a Bible as people who are in a marriage is that everything you're talking about, when she was talking about choice, I looked at her, I'm like, God has actually specified how you can find a partner in the Bible. But what has killed us is that we are very ignorant of these things. We don't know. That's why, like for us now in our church, we are always encouraged to read Proverbs. Proverbs, a chapter per day. You will get to know, how do I choose a friend? How do I tell a good friend? How do I tell a good partner? All these things are in Proverbs. If you sat down and read Proverbs just in 1 month, next month, you will get all your answers. So for me, I feel like we are getting that misunderstanding because we are ignorant. We don't have information, all these things. And when you talk about that people, this generation has their way, but their way is not working for them, is it? So if it's not bringing results, then we have to really know that the only way is actually getting back to the basics which are in the Bible, because their ways are not getting us good results. We are not having fruitful children. That's why you go to work and you have all these kids with earphones and they are on YouTube and they are watching. Information is on YouTube. How to make a marriage is on YouTube. Books are there on PDF drive, wherever. But we are ignorant. So for me, some of those questions we have for the Gen Z, Gen Y, I don't know. Information. They have really ignored the right information and they are choosing what they want to hear. You find them on cartoons. I mean, what is cartoons going to add on you really? So for me, it's just that ignorance that is affecting us partly. But I want Lama to really speak into
He's going
what
to come.
you asked.
He's going to come on after
Yeah.
Constantine. Constantine, you are so passionate and you wanted to behead Cynthia. When she talked about the issue of the idea of faith, man, so I wanted you to talk about two things, right? First of all, why are people all passionate about read books? They want to read how to make money, how to make marriage work, how to raise children. But when you talk about the Bible, which is also a book, they have that thing. And then also, I want you to also about that faith. Man, every time I'm speaking on my WhatsApp status, I have a boss, even sometimes the masses things, and my boss is passionate about like the teachings of faith. What is that? What's the difference between faith, religion, and like you try to make it look like people don't really understand the faith concept of it. So clear it up for us now.
Me, how I think about marriage, Sime, is that when I say it's about faith, you see, I don't want to tether it to one religion.
Okay.
Faith is the optimism in our soul. Faith is the optimism I have that when I sit on this chair, it won't break.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's faith. Faith is
I
that.
will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, when I say I will see you tomorrow, this is not guaranteed. And there's no being, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Buddhist, someone has hope.
You have to believe in
You have to believe in something. And marriage, it's my experience. It's something you go in. Whether the times have changed 200,000 years, it is something you go in when you're not sure. Something you go in when you're scared. Something you go in when you're nervous.
That's why women cry.
Yeah, women cry. Some run away. Some actually run away.
From the old.
Yeah. So when I say the word faith, I need the viewers, the listeners of Real Talk and the watchers of Real Talk to understand that faith is that sense of optimism that if I try hard, this will work, and when it will work, I'll get a better life.
Isn't that Constantine now? Doesn't that in a way work
Reflect
against you?
Constantine's view.
Yeah, doesn't it work against you? Because if you say that, can I have a particular set of let's say beliefs? What constructs a faith? Particular sets of beliefs?
Yes.
Or
Yes. What constructs a faith is a particular set of beliefs that you're willing to cling on. For example, you are saying that modernity, the Gen Z, they find marriage are having old laws, but they are on jobs. Do you know that the rules and the principles of employment have not changed since the Industrial Revolution?
That's not true.
Yeah? You have to show up for work.
With qualifications.
You have to have qualifications. You have to actually deliver.
You have to please your boss.
You have
That's
to please them.
performance.
Yes, you might work from home
Yeah.
because you now have a laptop and internet, but you have to work
Yeah.
and hit the targets set by you by your boss.
Yeah.
But with the problem marriage is facing with the Gen Z, that they want to dismantle the core values, which can't change for you to have a marriage, and they want to leave the others. So that's why I was saying in the first bit that you cannot have your cake and eat at the same time.
you know what, Costa? Let me just bring in Lama, because Lama has been quite. Lama is passionate about this.
I'm sorry, but because Lama is going to sum it up. But you know, with all the additions that they have given, I would like him to also sum it up and elaborate on when you're saying the principles do not change. Does that also apply to the right person? Because ideally, most of the teachings would tell you a man should get married to a woman, without having sex or those things.
So,
All those.
you know what? The
So
good
now,
thing, yeah.
when it comes to these arrangements
Good
where
thing.
someone has
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
and is
But
coming
is
and saying
there-
marriage to someone
is
who
there-
doesn't
is there
have,
anywhere where
who is the right person to get into marriage?
Is there anywhere in the Bible where they say
Different
don't have sex
scenario.
before
I don't
marriage?
know.
No,
I don't know.
I'm saying
So
different
now-
teachings, not necessarily the Bible.
So in the interest of time, Constantine and Lama, since you're both, I don't know, should I say kind of close to interpreting marriage to be biblical standards, right? Is a person, in your opinion, is a person who doesn't look at marriage and relationships through the context of the biblical teaching and the whole concept of creation. Because as you know, a lot of people have their whole different types of creation. Are they doomed for it to? And the reason I say that, Lama, right? The reason I say that, Lama, you know history, right?
Yes.
You know that before Christianity spread around the world, people would have successful marriages until they die, believing in Poseidon, believing in exactly. So now, you as a person, would you say that now that we are in this era, right? Is there a possibility that somebody can have a different sort of faith and still make it work, or it has to be exclusive to marriage, to the godly, to the whole thing of the church?
First of all, I'll go.
There are so many questions.
I'm just thinking all these
in one.
questions. She had asked me to speak into the whole idea of. It actually came in from Cynthia and all through where she says there are things that won't change. Those are principles. In the example she gave, ultimately it's a job of a man to provide. Okay, it's the core job of a man to provide. But what do you do when you find yourself in as a man you're failing to provide? It's what helps you. It's these other principles that are shielding you. Okay, example we gave of submission. It's very many marriages where if the man doesn't provide, the woman throws in the towel.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But look at the sea.
Yes, you
run away.
throw in the towel.
Does not have money.
Yet, in the example you gave, I truly don't think that should actually be a permanent state of a man. It can be a temporal thing, but I don't think a man should be home, taking care of children
5 years,
for
10
5
years.
years, for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's something that can happen. Then as a man, I have to work towards figuring out how to provide to enable us, maybe get a nanny or something. So there are those core principles that won't change. You asked the question of the whole idea, should marriage be hinged on on the biblical
They say
understanding. Judeo-Christian.
Christian values.
values,
That's
yeah.
how they say it.
No, I really wouldn't want to go into okay, how each religion interprets it and all this. But I think, of course, the whole idea of faith, what you believe in, what you regard to as the truth. In the Greek word,
Okay.
when you read the Bible, the word truth, the Greek word for truth is reality. Okay, reality. Yeah, I mean, when they were when they are translating the Bible from Greek, because the New Testament was written in Greek. So when they are translating it into English, the word there, truth, which is used, it's the Greek word for reality. It's the word reality. So truth is reality in the eyes of God. Okay?
Not in the eyes of us as
Not in
human
the eyes of men.
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you an example. You can meet, people call them a faith-based healer.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You meet someone, they tell you, I'm a Christian, I believe a certain man called Jesus came
Yeah.
and he suffered from my sins,
Yeah.
and they whipped him so badly. You find it prophesied by a man, an old crazy guy called Isaiah. And these whips, 39 of them on his back, is how I can get healing. His body was brutalized so that I can be in a space where I go before him and say, you took up my diseases. Okay? And then a doctor comes and tells this guy, they bring in the facts. Okay? They do the test, they do these other tests they bring, then they say you have cancer cells in your body. Okay? They are medical facts. They are not lies. Okay? But then this other person has reality in the eyes of God. I know of countless people who have been healed because of their faith.
And the cancer cells disappear.
Completely healed. Okay?
I have had cases like that. Yeah, I know that. I've really seen some things that cannot be explained by science.
By explained by science.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said I haven't seen that.
So there are so many facts. Because you see, to come up with facts, you sort of like do research and then make conclusions. Okay? But then there is truth, there is reality in the eyes of God. And God's reality regarding marriage is that you get a man, you get a woman, the two are enough. You add in another one, then it's chaos.
And we already see it in
Yes.
society.
No, in the context of because you find some people having all this thing of why should they impose polygamy? Yeah, that why should they impose polygamy on us as Africans? Yes, it's a cultural thing, but here's the reality, man. It's a if you've been with one wife,
Are you saying it's a big
because a good marriage to be successful, you have to work at it.
Yeah, it's work.
It's work. It's really work. So yes, you can have with all these facts and prove your things, but there is an idea of a reality that has been portrayed by a being who supposedly is your creator. So I would rather give that person a benefit of doubt of and man, it's working. What has improved our marriage from when we join in? We've been married for
10 years now.
for 10 years now. So we had a whole rampage of like a rough patch. We began really having like serious reflection of, man, what's wrong here? Almost like halfway into our marriage. But the core principles that we are living of, what he talks about a joyful marriage, is the principles we have discovered in the Word of God that has brought joy in our marriage. She gave an example of people knowing us based on the past, or on our past marriage. We really don't care because we are not doing this for them. It sounds rude, but honestly,
I didn't want to say that.
No, honestly, it sounds rude. But we are working on us.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's to the extent that we have seen it work, we are so passionate because we believe it works. Okay? People will wait for our marriage to fail.
And it won't.
And you know,
Before we move on, because now after moving on from Lama, everyone is going to give a
Yes.
closing remark.
Yes.
So, I think I want us to dive into these other alternative forms of marriage and all that. But let's say there are two people, right, who have been married for a long time, and they have been relatively happy and they solve their problems, but they're not necessarily Christians. Or these other new people, you know, this marriage has become, I mean, in the Western part, it's not necessarily between man, woman, something like that, and they've also lasted long. Would you entertain a thought that maybe somebody can make it work outside those contexts of culture, tradition, and biblical?
But let me tell you this.
Yeah.
God's principles are universal.
Yeah.
They are not.
They are about
Christians.
love,
They are
care.
not for Christians.
I will use the same idea of gravity. Gravity doesn't respect anyone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Even the principles, they are not exclusive for Christians. You practice them, they work for you. Whether it's with money, whether it's with marriage. Find a guy who is very generous. They will never be broke.
Yeah, even if they're not really Christians.
Even if they're not really Christian.
Yeah.
People who are givers, they flourish really financially. So this whole idea of how come it's working when they are not really godly or Christians, no, they are practicing principles in there, not necessarily exclusively saying they are biblical, but dig in there.
But they are the
It's-
ones that
they are
work for
universal.
Yeah. That's a very big point.
They are universal. They are for humanity. God is that kind. Rain doesn't rain on righteous people only.
Yeah.
There's a sketch of that in the Good News Bible.
Yes. You know, he's a compassionate God. And for me, when you go back to the faith, this is the whole conclusion about faith.
By the way, before we leave you need to differentiate between
Yes.
faith and spirituality, faith and religion.
I just feel we complicate it so much.
By level.
This is just a beautiful relationship between a human being and his creator.
Simple.
Okay? And it's impossible without bringing in the idea of a man called Jesus. That's what ticks people off.
Yeah.
So, you know, guys, if we are to go on, man, this won't end. Because I think we have done an hour. So I even was actually supposed to talk about some of the different challenges. But I think this is very important because at least it lays the groundwork on which we can answer questions. Because I believe that it's like if before you go into a shop, you have to first know, is it a hardware shop? Is it a grocery shop? You can't go to a hardware shop and you ask for buns, right? So I think if someone now is watching this moving forward, they will know that when we are trying to explain how marriage works, it is with respect to tested values. Things that really people have practiced and have seen them work, right? So Cynthia, any last words? Yeah.
Well, I've registered everything that has been said.
Yeah.
I've still not understood who the right person is.
The right person is.
Yes,
I think
like
that-
which
yeah.
who is qualified to go into marriage?
Who is it?
Have
Yeah.
not
Maybe we should,
had
the
us
next
talk about
podcast
that.
should be
That's
about
it.
that.
The next podcast I think should
Really
be about
how do you,
the
what
flags.
informs you
Yeah,
to,
the red flag.
Yes, who is qualified to go into marriage?
Yeah.
Because the people go into marriage with different scenarios in their life. We have the single mothers, we have
Yeah.
the single fathers,
Yeah.
we have us who are still young and
Yeah.
those
Hey, young.
All
Okay.
those things.
She's young. Constantine, any last remarks?
Well, it's an honor to be here, and as I make my last remarks, you see, I've realized, according to the comments on the previous shows of Real Talk, some of the viewers of this program do not necessarily think to make a relationship work, a marriage work, is necessarily being a believer in faith in the context of religion, that is God and Jesus Christ. But the psychologists, they say that for any marriage to work, if we become science, we go in science, psychology, if a relationship to work, there are three pillar stones, or like three amasiga, like three cook stones. One is passion. The second is commitment, and the third is intimacy. Now the problem of Gen Z, they mistake marriage as passion only. Now what is in passion? the texting, the sexy chats on the phone, the good sex, the going out, you know, the kissing in public,
Stop at the passion
the lifting
day.
me on the beach. But when time comes
For commitment.
for commitment and intimacy, now intimacy is when I'll be fired on the job and I come and tell you, sweetheart, man, COVID yatukulie. They have fired me on the job.
And then the woman tells you, I saw it before I got married.
You're cursed, you're haunted. And this is a person who pretends, that they don't believe in faith. But when you tell them I've been, every time they chase you, then there's I need to go for deliverance. And they are not believers in the first case. So I think as next time as we're looking at the next
flags.
topic, the flags, you need to look for you don't stop at passion. Yes, the sex can be good, the chemistry can be good, but there's a time when even age outgrows the passion.
Yeah.
When I'm 40, I will not need to have sex like when I was 20 with you.
Speak for yourself.
That is the truth.
This is the truth. Yeah, I've seen guys who have 50 years. I know.
And they still have game.
Yes, I think with faith. Now, when that's where I got faith and culture. You see, when you're cultured.
Are you saying last remarks or your
Yeah, no, I'm the last remarks.
Yeah.
I want people to say that I'm connecting my whole topic on this show, that the commitment and the intimacy is the one that you use and you benefit from having faith and culture. Because faith and culture bring the intimacy and the commitment.
Okay, Lucas. Also, Lucas, don't take over that because I didn't say last remarks.
You give us a summary of your summary.
Yes. So for me, I think my last remarks are really simple. It doesn't. Our marriage wouldn't be here if we hadn't made the choice to really be happy. Because we all get in relationships to be happy. There is no reason I should be in a relationship and I'm the saddest person in the world. And let me tell you, if we were to pretending, you would actually see it. Because you can't come on the set and
You can't.
you
All these
pretend
times
really.
now, you can't fake it.
At least those that are in the studio can be our witnesses. So we made a choice to work on it. Like he's saying, it's a commitment. Let me tell you, it's as a woman, for example, to have a husband who is not providing in that season, it's the hardest pain you go through as a woman. But at the end of the day, you're reminded that we are here for better, for worse. And this is my worst. I've shared experiences of people who get married and the first week they tell you your wife has cancer. Do you leave her? No, you don't. Because that is the time he or she needs you.
Some people, they struggle to get a child.
Yeah,
And they don't run away as a man.
Yes. So for me, it's for better, for worse. For those who have been saying we know their story, yes, you know the past us, but this is the new us.
The
And we
storage.
don't want, the reason the real talk is here is because we don't want people to go through the pain we had to go through to learn the lessons we've learned. Because we are sharing principles and experiences and things that have helped us redeem the time.
Amen.
Get back the joy. And every couple deserves that. So don't be there and judge. Just learn and have a beautiful relationship, have a beautiful marriage.
And Lama, since she's the one who introduced the show, you will give the last remark and you close the show. Because I was just an MC. It was just a gig. Another Kaimbo is about to come through.
The last remarks is, in all honesty, it's God has given us the most beautiful gift God gave us is a will, choice.
Yeah.
So the choice is up to the viewer. The choice is for you to listen in and pick something. No one can ever force you that. But I can guarantee you there's something to learn in this whole conversation in here. So yeah, this has been exciting. Thank you everyone and see you next time.
God bless you.